Hey lovelies! So I'm sure you've noticed these days, I am all about making life in the kitchen as quick and easy as possible, especially when it comes to busy weeknights. And today I am doing just that with 3 amazing one-pot pasta recipes that are all super delicious but so easy to make. Starting with this unbelievably tasty, cheesy ravioli skillet. So this one is a truly classic comfort food. The whole family will love it, and it comes together in an absolute snap in a single skillet on the stove. I'm just heating up a little bit of oil in my skillet, and as soon as that oil is nice and hot, I'm going to get my ground beef into the skillet. Now, if you don't want to use beef in this recipe, you could swap in some Italian sausage. That would be really yummy. Or you could use some ground turkey or chicken. There are lots of wonderful options. If you want to leave this recipe vegetarian, you could actually also do that and leave the meat out entirely. Totally up to you. We're gonna get started by cooking up our beef until it's no longer pink. I'm going to season it up with some salt and pepper and break it into bits using the side of my spoon. As soon as that beef is cooked through, I'm going to go ahead and add some tomato sauce to this. So for all of these recipes, I'm going to be cheating with some supermarket shortcuts. I'm using some store-bought tomato sauce here. What could be easier? I'm also going to be adding some beef broth here because I want a little bit of extra liquid because our pasta is going to be cooking right in this sauce. And that little bit of extra liquid is what's going to add a ton of great moisture to this dish. At this point, I like to add just a touch of heat with some red pepper flakes. If you want to skip the spice entirely in this dish, you definitely can. It's totally up to you. I'll just give this all a good stir. As soon as it's reached a boil, I'm going to reduce my heat to medium, and then I'm going to add in some greens. Now you can really add any kind of veggies you want here. I had some leftover baby spinach in my refrigerator, so that is what I am adding today. I gave it a quick chop to make it nice and small, and I'm just going to get it right into my sauce. It's gonna wilt away. You're not even gonna know it's there. Once that spinach is wilted and nicely incorporated into our sauce, I'm going to go ahead and add my pasta. For this recipe, I'm using some fresh cheese and spinach ravioli. I found this in the deli section at my supermarket. You can really use any kind of ravioli here you like. You could use beef if you wanted to, or chicken, or just cheese. Cheese and spinach felt right, so that's what I'm using here. Once I've got all that yummy ravioli into my skillet, I'm going to give it a good mix and make sure it's all topped with that amazing sauce. Then I'm going to reduce my heat to medium-low and let this just simmer away for about 5 to 6 minutes. Basically, your pasta is going to cook up in all of that saucy goodness. It's going to absorb some of that liquid, and what you're going to be left with is this beautiful, tender pasta that is just begging to be topped with cheese. 2 kinds in my house. I'm starting with a good sprinkle of shredded mozzarella cheese here, which gets nice and ooey gooey through the cooking process. And I'm also going to be topping this with a good helping of freshly grated Parmesan cheese as well. It's got such great flavor. At this point, you have the option to leave this on the stove and let that cheese melt, or you can pop it under the broiler like I do. I love having the cheese melt under the broiler because it starts to get a little golden on top, and that is my very favorite time. When this beauty comes out of the oven, it is bubbly and delicious and ready to be devoured. I finish it off simply with some freshly chopped parsley. Let me tell you guys, this dish is an absolute winner. I can assure you, you will not need to worry about leftovers. Next up, guys, for something a little more sophisticated but equally delicious, I am making this unbelievable creamy mushroom and blue cheese gnocchi. Okay, even if you are a blue cheese hater, stick with me. This dish could totally change your mind. Now, it's going to start, as most of my favorite recipes do, with some butter in a skillet. I'm just going to let that butter melt down, and then I'm going to be cooking my mushrooms. So I'm using some cremini mushrooms here that I've just cut into quarters. You could swap in some portobellos here, some porcini, or even some white button mushrooms would definitely do. You've got options, is what I'm trying to say. We're going to let our mushrooms cook up for between 5 and 6 minutes until they release some of their moisture and start to brown up a little bit. And that means it's time to start loading in our flavor. First up, I have got some shallot headed in here, as well as some minced garlic, 2 of my very favorite super flavorful ingredients. I'm going to let those cook up with my mushrooms for another minute or so, and then I'm going to go ahead and add some chicken broth to my skillet. Traditionally, I would use white wine in this recipe, but a lot of you don't like cooking with wine, so I'm leaving it out in favor of chicken broth. If you did want to swap in the white wine here, definitely your call, totally up to you. Because I want this dish to be nice and creamy, I'm also going to be adding a good helping of cream to my pan at this point. And all I'm going to do is let that mixture come to a simmer. I just wanna see some bubbles start to break the surface, and that means it's time to reduce my heat to medium-low, and I'm going to get my gnocchi into the skillet. That's right, we're not even going to cook our gnocchi separately. We're going to do it right in the same pan, which is super convenient because it means fewer dishes for you. And that is always a good thing on a busy weeknight. Once I've got my gnocchi in the skillet, I am going to cover it with a lid and let this simmer away for maybe 5 to 7 minutes. We want that gnocchi to be nice and pillowy and soft and tender. And the best part is the starch from the gnocchi is also going to help our sauce be nice and thick and rich and delicious. At this point, it's time to add our finishing ingredients, which includes a whole heaping helping of crumbled blue cheese. Now, if you really cannot get on board with the blue cheese here, you could try some goat cheese in this recipe instead. That would add a nice tang as well, but the blue cheese really makes it. So if you're feeling adventurous, definitely give it a try. This will make you a blue cheese believer. We're going to stir that mixture all together for about a minute or so, just until that blue cheese is completely melted and everything is saucy and glorious and delicious. And then the final step is going to be stirring in some freshly chopped parsley for good measure. Guys, I promise you, you will not be able to get enough of this dish. No kidding, it is actually one of the best dishes I have made all year long, I would say. That's saying a lot. I make a lot of food on this channel. Next, guys, we're making this amazing rustic pasta dish. It is tortellini with some turkey sausage and some kale, so it's also got some nutrition snuck in, which I love. I'm going to get started with a nice big skillet on the stove. I'm going to heat up a little bit of oil in my skillet. And once my oil is nice and hot, I am going to cook up some sausage. So today I am actually using some smoked turkey sausage. You could use pork here as well, that would definitely work. What I love most about smoked sausage is that it actually is pre-cooked. So all we're really doing is just heating it through and getting it nice and crispy on its edges. Crispy sausage, of course, is where it's at. Once your sausage is nice and brown on one side, you'll want to flip it over and get it browned on the other side. Then you can go ahead and just use a spoon and remove your sausage from the pan and set it aside while you get to work on making your sauce for this yummy pasta. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and add a little minced garlic to the pan. You guys know I am a lover of all things garlic. As soon as that garlic is nice and fragrant, after about 30 seconds or so, I'm going to go ahead and add a whole can of fire roasted diced tomatoes to the pan, as well as a nice big splash of chicken broth and some Italian seasoning. I'll hit this with some salt and some pepper, give it a good mix, and then let it just come to a boil. As soon as you start to see those bubbles forming on the surface, you know it is time to get your tortellini into your skillet. I'm using some fresh cheese tortellini. Once again, I found it in the deli section at my supermarket. And then we can basically just let this cook up for say 5 minutes or so. We wanna make sure the pasta is nice and tender. You can go ahead, pop a lid on this and let it cook for between 4 and 5 minutes. The great part about fresh pasta like this is it cooks up so fast. It's so perfect for weeknight cooking. Once that tortellini is nice and tender, it is time to get our greens happening in this skillet. And today I'm doing that with some amazing kale. Now I've got a whole heaping helping of chopped kale headed in here. It might seem like overkill at first, but I promise you it's going to wilt right down and just become nice and incorporated into that sauce. That means it's time to add my sausage back into the pot, as well as a nice big sprinkle of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. I'm going to give this another good mix, let it cook for another 1 to 2 minutes, and this tastiness is ready to be enjoyed immediately. How could you resist? And honestly, I could have 2 or 3 bowls of this pretty easily. It's a good day for stretchy pants, I'll just say that. And there you have it, pasta la vista, baby. I hope you'll give all 3 of these tasty recipes a try. And if you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo, because you guys know how much I love seeing your kitchen creations. Remember, all 3 of these tasty recipes are linked in the description box below, so you can find them there. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.